When was like the crossover made? When it started out with the dirt race, where the dirt track racing, and then when did it become, the Harley Davidson that we see now and that people relate to?
Well, the company has a really rich history of racing. Our
A lot of
first
people don't know about that.
right. Our first race team actually goes back to 1914, and even prior to that, Walter Davidson, one of the original founders, he would take bikes off the assembly line and set off on these cross-country enduros. And we have some trophies in our lobby at Juneau Avenue for Walter. And that was very important because very early on, he proved the dependability and reliability of the motorcycles by showing people he could take one from the assembly line and enter it in these competitions and do very well with them. So the racing history has been with us all along, and we recently had a road racing team with Pascal Pascott, and Scott Russell was on it for a while, Chris Carr, and we've turned that off for a little while to concentrate on drag racing, and we're competing in NHRA now in the modified class.
Yeah.
And we haven't won a race yet, but we've been in several final rounds, and we're real close.
Talking about dependability, let's go a little bit back in history. World War II. Is that what kind of got, the Army, and I mean, the government wanted Harley Davidson bikes in the war because of that, right?
Yeah, there's a saying out that the bike that won the war, and that's the WLA 45 cubic inch motorcycle that was really a dependable, reliable, important device for the Army back during World War II. And I think a lot of people were introduced to motorcycling in that war and learned how to ride. And after the war, they loved riding, so they came back and started buying civilian bikes. And we had a significant growth spurt both after World War I and World War II because of that full exposure to motorcycling.
Tell us a little bit about that post-war decade. I mean, that's when the rebels started. Talk about the vets coming back from the war. They had that fire in them, and they wanted to, have their bikes. Is that how it all got started? That rebel period?
Well, I think what was going on in that part of history is exactly what you said. I mean, the country was in an elevated mood because the war was complete, done, history, and there were good times ahead, and people wanted to enjoy life and not think about the war. And so the riders who came back wanted civilian bikes, and they were buying those. Some clubs were starting to form, and in the early 50s, you had The Wild One. And The Wild One was a movie with Marlon Brando, and it took on the Hollister event in California, which was hyped by Life magazine, and that turned into a media frenzy. Although it was a tiny little event, there were several hundred people there, that's all. But when it hit Life magazine, everybody thought it was thousands of people. And actually, the guy that was sitting on the bike, the most famous picture of all, with all the beer bottles under him, that was a posed photo.
Yeah, it was posed.
Yeah, we've researched all that.
Yeah.
So that was not really even a natural happening. But, as far as the world was concerned, these people were stereotyped from then on. And the world has never forgotten that movie. But it's, I guess in all honesty, there's a little rebel in all of us. And I think motorcycles are exciting things for exciting people. And I will always believe that. And I believe it's an escape. I believe it's something that doesn't appeal to everybody. But I think it has the magic of reforming people and making them feel like they're escaping from all the humdrum that's going on daily in their lives, and so the rebel thing is part of us, and we're proud of it.
Speaking of that 50s, 60s period, you know, the Outlaws, they started coming out in that period, and the Choppers, you know, people were customizing their bikes. If I'm not mistaken, Willie, you kind of liked that whole period when you started seeing customized bikes, and not everybody in Harley Davidson liked it, but you kind of were the one that said, no, this is cool. We got to, watch these guys. Is that true?
Yeah, I think there's always been an appeal in my mind to customized Harley Davidsons. Actually, that goes back into the 30s with the early bobbers and the whole thing, but it was a very minute, tiny group of people that were doing that. It became more popular certainly in the 50s and 60s, and as an artist designer, I always saw interesting things in those bikes, and we weren't in that game at all. We had a standard Sportster and a standard big touring bike in the 50s, but we didn't have a truly something that answered the so-called custom cruiser look. So I was able to create a bike back in that time that started to fill that void. I'm very proud of that. The original Super Glide kind of filled that void and became part of a whole line of motorcycles that's a big part of our line today.